Hi guys, welcome back to Eric's Hobby Workshop. Today we're going to be restoring, building, and speed painting a Cawdor gang from the classic 1995 edition of Necromunda. Let's get to it! I started this project by picking up a few old models on eBay. These things have been out of print for a long time. I think they were first released in 1995. But they still look cool, apart from these old paint jobs and looking a little bit beat up. But we can fix that. The first thing that I do is break them apart from their plastic stands. I'm going to strip them of paint, and I don't want the stands to dissolve. So add them to a glass jar and add some Dettol. This is an antiseptic liquid you can find in most pharmacies or corner stores. I secure the lid tightly, and then I wait a couple days to allow the Dettol to really loosen up the paint. Once it's been a couple days, I take an old toothbrush and I give the miniatures a gentle scrubbing of the brush. What I like about Dettol is you don't have to scrub well at all. A light pressure and the paint comes sloughing off. The unfortunate thing about Dettol is that sometimes you get this sort of gummy, sticky residue. With the heavy stubber fella here, it was really bad. Look at this stuff on my hands. Disgusting. So let's change products to LA's Totally Awesome. Use a little bit of this stuff, and you can see the rest of the paint's coming off already. After a few days, the water is absolutely dark with how much paint has come off. This time I was smart enough to wear gloves, so after a bit of scrubbing, brilliant, that's more like it. That's a clean miniature that we can work with. Around this time I picked up a few reinforcements, so I popped them into their own jar, added some LA's Totally Awesome, and look at this. We've got a whole gang ready to go. Cool. Okay, so I decided to base them on these new Sector Mechanicus bases from the new Necromunda set. I'm going to be playing the new Necromunda rules with these guys, and all the other gangers I have so far have these same bases, and that really ties things together. So I start with a little file, and I file down the points where they used to have a tab on their feet, because these bases aren't slot bases. There's no slot for the tab, you just gotta file their feet flat. Do that quickly to each one of them. Now the miniature with the heavy stubber, he was standing on one foot, so he's much more fragile than the others when just using super glue. So what I did was I sprinkled a little bit of baking soda onto the joint as it was gluing. And what that does is it instantly cures the super glue and adds this strong little crust. How strong, you ask? Well, I dropped this model shortly before recording this voicing, and the arm of the gun popped off, but the foot joint stayed secure. So I'd say that's pretty strong. And let's not forget the rat. I take him outside and I hit him with a coat of Chaos Black undercoat. Trying to keep it nice and thin so I don't disturb the details, and trying to get up in the cracks by laying them on their back and flipping them over, get it just right. This is kind of a practice makes perfect type thing. The first thing I did was paint the flesh Kislev flesh color. I chose a nice pale flesh color because I imagine these guys didn't get that much sun in the deep tunnels of the underhive. My approach for the batch painting is to paint each color on each guy before moving on to the next color. So once my whole gang has flesh color, then I'll move on to the next step. Whenever I'm not sure what color scheme I want to use, I start by blocking in the colors that I know I'm going to use. So flesh tones, metal, sometimes leather pouches, some brown things like that. If you get those pieces in there, you can start to see how the blocking on the model is working, and that can help you make your decisions. So in this case, after I did the flesh tone, I already figured out what I thought I might want to do. So I put together a test model, and what the test model does is allows me to reference for the rest of my speed paint, which can save time. Here you can see the model that I made as a test. I've developed the color scheme, I like it, and now I'm ready to go forward on the rest of my models. Next step is Runefang Steel. I apply this to all the guns, all the knives, and anything else on the model that I think should be silver. These wrenches on the back of the guy with the grenade launcher, those should definitely be silver. silver may look bright now, but when we wash it later, it'll really dull it down, so don't worry about it. Next, I use Wraithbone to paint their trousers a lovely off-white color. Next up is Retributor Gold. I use this for shell casings and decorative elements around the models. This bandolier, the bolt shells in the bolt gun. Next, I use Cawdor Blue for the cowls, mantles, and tabards. I use Rhinox Hide for half of the leather items. Pouches, holsters, things like that. But the other half of the leather items, I paint XV88, which is an orangey or brown, and I do that just for variety, because often there's several items clustered together around their waists, and this gives some nice contrast. When you're batch painting a whole bunch of miniatures at once, everything you have to make a decision about can slow you down significantly. If you can get into that zone where you're just painting without really thinking about it, maybe with a podcast in the background or a TV show on that you're watching out of the corner of your eye, that's when you can get the most done with the least possible pain and tedium. The rope elements get painted Karnak stone, a nice dark off-white. The bases get a solid coat of Rhinox hide. Looking good so far. Next, I use Caliban green, and I use this for the flasks and bottles that some of the guys have. Not everybody has this. But I also paint any grenades that I see with the same dark green as sort of a unifying element. For the guys who are grinning or grimacing, I picked out the teeth in Wraithbone. And then I painted the hair in a couple different colors. One was XV88, one was a mix of XV88 and Rhinox hide, and one was a blonde color where I mixed a little bit of yellow and a little bit of Wraithbone. That's this guy. One of my brothers has curly blonde hair like this. Next, I use Agrax Earthshade on all the brown and off-white elements to give them a little bit of depth, a little bit of contrast in the corners, and to make everything pop. I also apply it to the flesh areas. This really gives a sense of shading and depth and brings out the details. Cawdor gangers don't have a lot of resources and their weapons are dirty and in ill repair, so a little bit of this wash on the weapons is not out of place. Make sure the wash is pooling in areas you like, and pull it away with the brush in areas you don't want it. Next, I apply some Nuln Oil to the metal, which gives some areas of shadow and a bit of that dark, greasy, grimy look we want. Nice. Next, I'm going to paint that little rat. I start by dry brushing him a mix of Wraithbone and Abaddon black. Kind of dark, just picking out some of the details. And then I come in with a little bit more Wraithbone in the mix and lighten up the gray a little bit. Just trying to pick out the details quickly, not going to spend too much time on this guy. A little bit of Kislev flesh on the tail, the ears, and the mouth area, and also picking out the paws with that color. And then Wraithbone for the teeth and claws. And I pick out his eyes with black. Then I use some wash, same as before, Agrax Earthshade. And that is it. Nice and quick. I finish off the stands by dry brushing with some Runefang steel. This just highlights the edges a little bit and gives that rusty steel look, like they're all standing in a dystopian wasteland. Then I come in with some Abaddon black, touch up the areas where another color might have got on something that I'm going to leave black. This just helps crisp up the look of the model. Cool. Now we're doing some highlights. Come in with a Lightok blue. A Lightok, I don't know. It's a lighter blue. Just touching the edges of the hoods, the cowls, the dagging on the sleeves of the cowl here. Just getting a nice little highlight that'll really pop from across the table. This isn't a golden demon quality thing I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to add some nice contrast that your eye picks up. With the same thing in mind, I use Warboss green to highlight the canteens and the grenades. I think that's the last little detail we're going to do. Then we're going to call these bad boys done. You can always come back in and pick out more details, but I think these guys are looking great right now. That was a quick, easy way to get this gang ready for some gang warfare. Necromunda is a really fun game. If you haven't played it before, I really recommend you try it. You only need a few guys to get into the action, and it's incredibly narrative, incredibly engaging. As you can tell, I'm pretty inspired by it, and I think this stuff is just so cool. Can't get enough of it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a comment down below, and we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.